Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Sunbury Motors, North 4th Street in Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf.
We turn our attention to on3.com, Blue White Illustrated, Nate Bauer. Sir, happy holidays. Welcome.
Steve Jones, hello.
Great to catch up with you. It's a long time no see.
I mean, over 24 hours, so it feels like a lifetime to me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. So recruiting is, everybody understands, Nate covers games, he covers the sport, he covers the team. Recruiting is not in his wheelhouse. They have others for that. Sean Fitz does a great job. Ryan Snyder does a great job. But you were at the event, and just from seeing, quote, the event of it, what struck you about it?
Yeah, it's funny. It is always about James Franklin, and it's funny. It coordinates so well with his message in general about it being more than the player, right? It is such a collaborative sport, and so in every aspect of the program, and look, I think that this is mimicked and duplicated pretty much across the country when it comes to college football. You are talking about an army of people that deliver every single day for the sport to run, right? So on the granular level, like starting at the very foundation with the kids, right, the recruits that come into the program, the first thing he talks about is with every single interaction that he has during these Zoom calls is about the parents, right? It's about the siblings. It's about the trainers. It's about all of the people that help get that player into a position where they have an opportunity to come to Penn State. And really, as you examine the room, if you're standing there, so there's obviously a little bit of media there, there's some donors, and there is, again, that army of staffers, right? the pats on the back that you see from coach to coach, from assistant to assistant. It's about getting over the line, right? Like getting past the finish line. There is so much work in maintaining and developing relationships that go into getting that commitment, that go into the culmination of that day yesterday. It's about so much more than just the individual player, just the one-off of a huge commitment.
The couple also raneth over when it came to the ability to talk with everybody. That includes the new defensive coordinator, Tom Allen. Your impressions of him?
Yeah, that's funny. Energetic, right? He is a mile-a-minute guy in terms of words that come out of his mouth. This is inside baseball joking, but we use a program called Otter, right, to transcribe, to help a journalist transcribe when people talk. So yeah. I think that he will give Stacey Collins a run for his money in terms of actual words spoken per minute. That will be even difficult for a digital transcriber to keep up with. But obviously, a kind-hearted, dedicated guy who cares about players, loves the sport of football, loves defense, and again, something that struck me yesterday is listening to people who have been in the chair of a head coach. Yep. And just it is a different profession from being a coordinator, from being an assistant coach, right? And so having had that appreciation, Manny Diaz was in the same spot, right? Having had an appreciation for what it means to operate a program at the level that James Franklin does, sometimes I think it's nice. I think that these guys come out of those situations and can say to themselves, man, it'll be great to coach the linebackers again. Right? And so it points out it's 2 points of contrast. One, an appreciation from their side into how James Franklin operates the program. And I think that Pat Kraft detailing some of the hiring process and watching James work to make hires is a fascinating insight into how he operates. But then also for the coaches themselves, right? Having this opportunity to step back from all of the tentacles that go into being a head football coach, right, at a program of Penn State stature. It's an interesting contrast that they put out there yesterday.
Well, and top of that, he talked about sitting in linebacker meetings and being pulled out because as a head coach, he had 1,000 things to take care of. And now he's going to get to concentrate on one side of the ball. It's the side of the ball he loves.
Yep. It's always funny to me. I'm interacting with fans, obviously, and this whole conversation, this is a little bit of a tangent here, Steve, but this whole conversation this season talking about Franklin's influence over Penn State's offense. Right. And forget what James Franklin says about it, right? Don't worry about that. They have clearly defined and outlined what the dynamic is over the years, but don't listen to him. Listen to Tom Allen. Right? Listen to Tom Allen talk about your inability. Like, you do not have the opportunity to do that when you're sitting in the head coach's chair. It's just not how it works, right? You have coordinators that on the very basic level own, operate, run their side of the ball. And so for Tom Allen, he gets the opportunity to go back to that, to get back to something that he proved himself to be very good at. I think that he proved himself to be very good as a head coach, right? There were things about what Indiana did during his tenure there that were impressive.
No doubt.
But certainly how he made his bones, right? How he got to that opportunity in the first place at Indiana was by being a linebackers coach, by being a defensive coordinator. And so it'll be interesting to see him settle back into that role without the distractions of academics and donor relations and NIL, like all of that stuff that comes into play for head coaches. He's not going to have to deal with now.
Exactly. Pat Kraft also had his press conference. What was the primary take from that, in your opinion?
Oh, man. Where to start? I think certainly there was an insight into the world of what major college football is right now. I mean, nobody that I've seen, certainly not James Franklin, certainly not Pat Kraft, has gone into the detail or the level that Chip Kelly did in terms of a revised version of what college football should or could look like in the future. But him talking about NIL NIL being the primary funding of player compensation as not being a sustainable model, he leaned into that. He said, no, it can't be, right? You cannot have fans having to pick up the bag on this. It is something that he wishes Penn State, the university, the institution, was able to take a bigger hand in. And certainly I think that we can all read the tea leaves. We know where this is going. It will get to that point, but right now it's not there. And then on top of that, I think that certainly his rundown of all of the projects that they have going on right now, I think is very insightful, right? It is. There was a Board of Trustees meeting last spring where a bunch of stuff, right, 6-7 projects got approved. And that was including, but not even like the Lash building, the second story of the Lash building, it goes under construction really as we speak. It's being renovated as we speak. But that's just one aspect of all of the facilities projects that are taking place across Penn State athletics right now.
Which is remarkable. If collective bargaining ever comes into play, and I'm only using if just to couch it, how much would that actually benefit Penn State?
Oh, it'd be huge. It'd be the best thing that could happen to Penn State because it is such a robust athletic department. Look, are there ramifications to all of these things? Absolutely, right? There is a backside of this where if the money has to come from somewhere and you're unlikely to see compensation levels and some of the investment levels of basketball and football, you're unlikely to see those take a step back, right? So if you have to account for the money that then gets diverted to football players and men's basketball players, what have you, there could be an impact, right, on some of the other 29 non-revenue sports, right? There could be an impact there. But if you're just looking at from the standpoint of Penn State fans are being asked to, carry the load of paying for players right now, and it's, how do I put this gently, being met with mixed, right? Like a mixed result. There's still a queasiness that I would say exists within the fan base, right? And that's men's basketball and football in terms of their embrace of NIL. You can bypass that when you get to revenue share, right? You don't have to have a full embrace by the fan base. NIL will still be necessary. There will still be the actual meaning of NIL, of wanting players to have opportunities to benefit and to make some extra money based on their notoriety, their position as a football player. Yeah, those things are great, but that's not the funding mechanism that it should be. And I think that we all know that. It's just a matter of the sport getting there.
Agreed. It's always fun to actually cover the games. So, there's a game coming up. It's sold out, by the way. What's your general impression of the matchup, Penn State Ole Miss Peach Bowl?
Yeah, I think that I ran some numbers after Penn State lost to Michigan, right, in November, and was trying to find relevant comps for teams that had to face two juggernauts during the season. Right. And there was one. There was one that aligned.
Ole Miss.
In terms of having – and it was Ole Miss.
Yeah.
It was Ole Miss, right? Ole Miss had to play. Ole Miss was the only team in the SEC of that stature, right? I didn't go through all of the teams that had lost to both, right, and having to check out everything. But they were the one team that had a bunch of wins that weren't Georgia and Alabama.
Right.
Right? Like those were the two games that they couldn't get through. Penn State obviously had Ohio State and Michigan. And so you're both programs, I feel like, are left with this opportunity and this excitement for confirming and affirming to themselves that they are what they thought they were, which is a good team, right? Ole Miss does great things offensively. It is going to be a fascinating and interesting matchup to see how this excellent Penn State defense fares against that offense. But overall, like from the broader perspective, I just see this as, for both programs, an opportunity. In Ole Miss's case, to do something that am I remembering this correctly? They haven't had an 11-win season in their history.
They have not.
Right? So that's a big deal. Meanwhile, Penn State and James Franklin are looking for their fifth 11-win season in the last 8.
Fifth, yes, right? And it draws with it complaints.
Yeah. So it'll be an interesting matchup. Well, I think that there are still some things to shake themselves out, right, in terms of personnel and roster availability for both teams, right? There's been some murmurs, I would say, on Ole Miss's side about who's going to be available for them. And certainly Penn State, there are still some questions to be answered in terms of which players will play for them. Yeah. But on the whole, I do think it's going to be a fascinating matchup.
All right, college basketball. Penn State, of course, had its game with Georgia Tech in the Garden. We know how it ended, and and as I said on the broadcast, I said normally it's, in my experience, a prerequisite to a foul is you have to be touched. College basketball, that's what I said, and college basketball, for whatever reason, in my experience, has always played from behind. There's 6 years behind the NBA with the three-point shot. They finally got a shot clock, but it was 45. Then they finally, after years and years, rolled it to 30. Right? The charge rule. I can go through a long list of things where college basketball is so far behind, flopping, where they're so far behind the NBA. The NBA has a challenge system, right? You get one. Okay. You can use it at 18 minutes or at 18 seconds. That's up to you. Is this something college basketball needs to have?
Yes. Having witnessed, I'm always curious to know how many people are paying attention game in and game out, right? How many fans of college basketball are just casual fans? They see some games, right? But you and I are watching every single Penn State basketball game, every single one, against the dregs of society and against the powerhouses. You name it, we're watching every single game. It is not a limited sample size over the last 10, 15 years of remarkably bad officiating, clock operation, right? You name it. There are just so many things.
I have 42 years of this. Okay, please continue.
There you go. I'm at a meager 19.
Right.
I'm trying to catch up. But no, it's consistent, and it just seems like it's funny that you mentioned it. I just saw a tweet, regarding some of these bowl games are now going to put tablets and headsets in the helmets, right?
Yes.
And the point of the tweet was, hey, this is something that came to the NFL 30 years ago, right? In terms of headset communication. So college athletics is it has to stop treating itself as though it is an after-school activity. Like it deserves better than that. The participants deserve better than that. There is such an investment made. Forget the money. The money is a huge part of it for sure, but these guys work tirelessly. It is ceaseless how they approach these games, and so their lives are dictated by wins and losses, outcomes, these kind of things. You owe it to them. You owe it to them to do better than that, and that's where it just feels to me as though you got to have whatever the mechanism is, whether it's the NCAA, whether it's commissioners, whether it's head coaches demanding it. I don't know, but there has to be responsible adults in the room that can say, look, these things need to fast forward. You got to catch up because it is a game that is taken very seriously and deserves that level of attention.
Right. And I don't need it tied to a timeout. To a timeout. To me, if you're out of timeouts and you want a challenge and you have it left, you should. And if you don't win the challenge, it's 2 shots plus the ball. Right, so you suffer a penalty in that regard as opposed to a timeout. I have no problem, but I just want to see them get it right. Oh, and by the way, announce it to the crowd. Don't leave it up to poor Jeff Brown to do it. I mean, come on.
Yep. Now, I understand how this will come across, so I'm going to use my words lightly here. But I feel bad for Tommy Morrissey. Right? Like I feel bad for
I understand.
Officials that are in that situation that think that they're making the right call. Like provide an outlet for them. Give yourself a backstop where you can say, okay, there's a net underneath us, so that if a mistake is made, we can correct it. We can look at there are mechanisms there to be able to get these things right. Because I don't understand any sentiment from anywhere, right? Coaches, ADs, referees, what have you, players certainly, who would think, yeah, you know what, this destroys the integrity of the game by not having it available to them.
Happy holidays to you. I hope the holidays bring with it a brand new driver.
Oh, man. I have a confession to make, Steve.
Yeah.
I've got to do some Christmas shopping. I'm a little behind.
Well, then I won't delay you any further. My friend.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much. You're the best. Appreciate you.
All right. Thanks.
Nate Bauer. on3.com, Blue White Illustrated. We'll come back. More in a moment. You know what we're going to do? We have a little fun next half hour. I know we've got the King coming up at it's going to be